Okay, everybody, let's see. We are getting ourselves situated here. Messages are coming in. So hang on just a moment. We're going to get ourselves all ready. Lori just hopped on here and I need more coffee or something. Okay.
Well, me too. I thought you might have waited for me, but here I am.
Well, we have people are sending me messages.
Yeah, but when we're waiting on technical issues, we wait, and I was having technical issues. So, and I'm grouchy today, so you get to talk.
No worries, no worries. I am here. I am kind of awake. Hope everybody had a good Easter. Did you have a good Easter, Lori?
I did.
Good.
How about you?
Good. Well, and you know what? It's April and it's Fair Housing Month. And everybody's going to probably be sick of fair housing by the end of April. So we'll let you guys all know now that on April 26th will be dark that week. And I know that's our Zoom meeting week. Maybe we'll reschedule. But we have CAR on our CAR meetings are that week. And it's hot and heavy. And I wish we could find a way to do it, but we can't. I just went through my calendar this morning and there's a lot of stuff going on for a long time. Have you looked at your schedule yet, Lori?
I glanced at it, but it requires printing, highlighting, and then plugging everything into your calendar so you don't block that time, and then waiting for all of the links to come out and then registering and popping those into your calendar. Then you have everything double booked. It's quite the fun process.
It is quite the fun process. Let me tell you. Yeah, I just hand wrote it into my my calendar and I'm like, okay, the links will come sooner or later. The links will show up, but it's like 2 weeks. It's crazy madness. I tell you, madness. But you know, it's nice because things don't overlap, but it'll be nice when we can all meet in person again and maybe have those overlaps, but we're just there for a week instead of 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, each time we kind of complain about it, but we get used to it. You know, when we're in person, we're always tired, we're exhausted, we're running all over the place. And then when it's on Zoom, it spans over 2 weeks. And, you know, not to say that we're sitting 8 hours a day on CAR meetings for 2 weeks, because we're not, you know, but you'll have 1, 2, or 3 meetings each day for 2 weeks. So it's a lot. It feels like a lot. It's still exhausting. Your feet just don't hurt because you're not running around.
Yeah, you don't really have to worry about, you know, transporting, you know, 6 days worth of business wear with you somewhere.
That too. Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I don't miss that.
I don't either. Yeah, I don't either.
Oh my gosh, I'm freezing here. Oh, I hope I hold in for my internet. It's been a little goofy lately, but
Yeah, that was
anyhow, Fair Housing Month. We have things going on, and we have things going on. We have events. We have things you can do, things we can talk about. I think we're going to devote one whole session this month to buyer love letters. You know what? Maybe we'll do that next week because you know what else next week is? I know you have no idea what next week is. It's the 1 year anniversary of this group. We started April 11th, 2020. So April 12th will be next Monday. And we'll have like a little, you know, 1 year. 1 year anniversary of nerdy real estate and nerdy realtors and nerdy everything under the sun. The emerging from the pandemic edition, I hope.
Well, not quite.
We're getting there. Slowly. If everybody does what everybody's supposed to do. Novel concept, I know.
That's the big concern because I was reading this morning when I woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't go back to sleep for a couple hours. You know, our numbers are okay, but they're sort of flattening, which is not necessarily a good sign because they were going down, they were trending down. So the concern is this flattening is a subtle increase. So other states are having some crazy resurgences, and they're not really projecting it for California. But I mean, I was out, gosh, Friday and a little bit Saturday, and you'd think it was normal life again. You know, just because people have one or both vaccines does not mean it's back to business as usual, because these variants are unknown whether the vaccines we're getting today are going to manage those variants. So we still have to be cautious.
And there's a whole lot of people that don't have vaccines.
Yeah.
And, just because some people have them and they're starting to get a little bit more confident doesn't mean that the 2/3 of I want to say it was a third of the Californians have gotten like one shot, but it could completely be off on that number. But even if that was the case, you still have 2/3 of the people that are running around and can contract this. And yeah, my street yesterday looked like a pre-pandemic holiday. Cars all up and down the streets. Went on a walk, went up to the park, and there was big family gatherings. They were outside, but they were all awfully close, and it's just like, oh, this is not good, guys. I mean, you don't know. Hopefully, all I could think about when I saw the people at the park was, I hope all of the older people had their vaccines. That's all I could hope for, because it was like, this is super spreader time, even though you're outside. They were all communal food and, that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, so yeah, we're not out of the woods yet. It's kind of nice. You can say there's kind of like a light at the end of the tunnel where, if enough of us, this is going to be make or break it month too, with the over 50 category opening up for the vaccine, and then the everybody else category opening up on the 15th. Just to see how that's going to look is going to be really interesting, I think.
Yeah.
But, it's been a year. It's been almost a year. But let's talk about fun stuff. Well, fun stuff for me, because I'm a nerd, and probably fun stuff for you, Lori, because you're a nerd, and hopefully everybody else here thinks it's fun, because we're all nerds. Fair housing. When you think of fair housing, the one way that somebody could be educated, what do you think of?
The way that they could be educated?
Yeah, how would you, where would the first place you would go if you wanted to be educated on fair housing? Just general overview. I can't talk.
As a licensee or as a consumer?
As a licensee. But good point.
Yeah, because there's different resources for each of those groups. And prior to 2020, and when I say 2020, I mean like summer of 2020, not even Fair Housing Month, April of 2020. Prior to summer of 2020, as a broker, I was scouring all of our usual resources for agent training. And I was so disappointed. For multiple years, I brought it to a risk management committee and said, we need to offer some resources. And everyone kind of like, oh, there's stuff out there. Well, no, the stuff that we had on our sites, and when I'm talking to our sites, I mean CAR site, NAR site, even the Department of Real Estate, it was all very dry, very, by the book, here's the letter of the law, but there was no practical scenarios. You'd have a little bit in the Code of Ethics training, but not enough, because the Code of Ethics training covers a variety of topics, not just fair housing. But what I was finding even on NAR's site was videos, which were, 5-minute videos where the first 3 minutes were great, but then you had to cut the video because the last 2 minutes would be geared toward a consumer, which doesn't sound like a problem, except the problem was, it was, if you feel you've been discriminated against, here's where you go to file a complaint. And so the first 3 minutes was, here's a scenario, rental office, agent, over the phone, client calls in, can I learn about XYZ property? Sure, it's great, it's available. And then the person comes in and the agent suddenly says this property is no longer available because whoever walked in the door didn't fit, the criteria anymore suddenly. And it was based on appearance. And so, those examples were really good, but then the last 2 minutes would be geared toward the consumer and how to file a complaint versus, hey, agent, here's how you don't stumble into that situation. Here's how you remedy that situation if you've accidentally said something or done something. And it didn't talk about prevention. So I have been disappointed as a broker for years not having available resources for the agents. So with all of the things that happened in 2020, this put a light on the topic. And now we've got some very good training for agents. So where would we start? Well, there's the At Home with Diversity certification. I took it a couple years ago and it was good. I recently retook it because it's been updated and it's much better. And so I don't have to recertify because I'm already certified. It's a one and done. You pay one time, you don't have to pay again, but you can continue to take the classes. So that's a great training to shed some light on what can happen and how an agent might find themselves in a discriminatory situation versus the original version, in my opinion, and Lisa, you shared you took it as well, maybe 2 years ago, or maybe early last summer before it was revised.
Or it was revised.
Yeah, and it was more about cultural differences, which that's a completely different class. That's not a diversity class. Here's some cultural differences. So that'd be the first place that I would start. And
would you recommend that if you took the old At Home with Diversity to see if you can sign up for the new one?
Absolutely. This new one is longer and it covers more areas of the topic to give you a better understanding of what's included in the fair housing laws and how do we really apply this to our business practices, and how do we respect and appreciate all of our differences and in our industry work for the common good for finding housing for all people. So absolutely. I know it had been offered for free in multiple associations, including NAR. And then if you wanted to actually get certified, there was a small fee through NAR. So I would presume that this entire month we're going to see promotions for the course. Whether the course will be free or not, I don't know. I remember when it first came out, that was my first trip to Washington, D.C., and I signed up for it for $25. And I had planned on going, but it was like right in the middle of the day for a good portion of the day. And it was my first time there, and you and I were going to be going sightseeing. So I did not attend.
So, hey, some things you gotta do, right?
Yes, I somehow didn't make it back to go to the class. And so a few months later it was offered and it went from $25 to $100. So I paid good money for that class, and it was a good class then. This second time around that I took it, I was able to take it for free, and it was really good.
Good, that's good to hear. I'm sorry, I just stepped on you 3 times.
That's okay, go ahead.
Well, and the current NAR president has put out a challenge to NAR members to complete not only the At Home with Diversity, but the Fairhaven simulation and implicit bias training. And let's talk about Fairhaven first. You've taken that, right?
I have not taken it yet, and I have until Friday to take it to meet the challenge.
You can do it. I mean, I did it, like they give you 60 to 100 minutes to complete the simulation, and you can pause it if you need to. I think I finished it in 26 minutes. So it can be done, and if you just concentrate, it can be done relatively quickly, but it definitely does make you think. And it's, you have some little tests in there, and then it gives you some scenarios. There's some, real life story videos that are in there. Definitely, it's interactive. It's, up to date, and I believe it's free. And I would recommend everybody here take it. And well, number one, you get this cute little certificate that you can print out and, to show that you did complete it. And two, it's just a good exercise to go through because you're put in, situations of, well, this just happened. Now, what do you do? And, if you pick the wrong thing, it'll say, well, maybe that wasn't the best choice. Let's go back and look at this again. And how can you, remedy the situation, which is something I want to talk about a little bit more later. But I think it's quick, easy, educational, whether we think we are sensitive to these things, which will lead into implicit bias training or not, anything that we can do to see how it feels, because it kind of gives you that, oh, I just kind of screwed up, and you're dealing with another human being, and it's anything that gets you into that mode and kind of helps you figure out how to navigate doing your job as a realtor is, in my opinion, extremely helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't think we should put too much emphasis on how quickly you can get through it, because these are real life scenarios, and these are things that we need to analyze, because for how many years have we known the fair housing laws? We studied it when we got our license, yet I know, honestly, I couldn't rattle off all of the protected classes, even when it was the shorter list, because you get to a point where you just kind of skim through it. And so, we have to be mindful when we're taking these courses, not to skim through it because, oh yeah, we know it. Like, stop and think about each of those, each of the protected classes. And of course, in California, we have more than in other states. And I'm waiting for the day where, instead of keeping adding to the list, we just kind of get it that, it's fair housing for everyone, but until we get to that place where everyone acknowledges that there are still groups that are faced with this all the time, we are going to continue to have to add to that list, because more and more groups are struggling and suffering because people are jerks.
Yeah, people
Sorry, I don't
are.
know how else to say it.
No, that's it's there's a lot of very, very tribal people, that are just like, well, you don't look like me, so I don't want anything to do with you, and a lot of the people here were preaching to the choir, and that's kind of the sad thing is, like within this group and within Deliberately Fair Housing, the other Facebook group, most of it's we're preaching to the choir. If you're here, it's because you are concerned, you want to be better, but it's not like somebody who has no idea. But if we can go and educate ourselves and then spread the word within our offices and everything, that would be really cool. And part of the reason I mentioned the time was I don't want people to think, oh well, it's going to take me an hour and a half, I don't want to do it.
Well,
I
what's
had
wrong with it taking an hour and a half?
not a darn thing, but people are people. And I was fortunate because for two reasons. One, I read really fast, and two, I'm really have been up on this stuff. Not that I'm an expert by any means, but just from being in a lot of the things I'm involved in, I kind of knew the answers more than maybe somebody else would, and it's just due to time exposed to these issues. But whether you can finish it fast or take the whole time to finish it, or need to break it up in different parts of the day, which you can do, you can pause it and come back. It's really, I think, one of the better tools that NAR has come up with, and I highly, highly recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, of the people that I've heard that have taken it, they've really spoke very highly about it. And in the beginning, people would just say, "Oh, it's really good, it's really good," but then they wouldn't describe what you just covered. That it is scenario based and how you feel while you're taking it and when you complete it. And so I'm looking forward to completing it. If I don't put it on my calendar, it doesn't get done. So, but
Yeah.
I'm adding it now.
Hashtag deadline issues. Yeah, I have a whole bunch of stuff I got to finish by the end of the month, because this was the time last year when NAR had like all the classes for free or half price or whatever. And I'm like, oh, register for that and for that and for that. And it's like, oh, crap, I got to go finish all of this stuff. So this is going to be Lisa Dunn's educational month, whether she likes it or not. But can't let all that good education go to waste.
No, not at all. And then you mentioned the implicit bias. And so I'm checking. I just posted in the Facebook group. Usually I don't have the Facebook open just because it's not in sync. So it's a distraction for me. But I have it covered up. So I was able to plug in the At Home with Diversity link. It's not the link to the calendar because there's a couple different options in there, but I wanted everyone to see what the course is. So there is a NAR, I forgot about this. NAR has an implicit bias training for realtors. Clicking through as we speak. But CAR brought in an amazing instructor, and his name is it's kind of difficult, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's like Root here. I don't remember his last name.
Yeah,
but,
I don't remember either, but he's good.
He's amazing. As CAR directors, we were required to take the class, and I'm so glad that they required it for us. It was 3 or 4 hours. It was, a good morning, and the reason I got so much value out of it was his approach was just so unique. I mean, he one of his techniques, and keep in mind he had to adapt this training. He had been doing this training previously, but he had to adapt it for Zoom. And honestly, I really liked it on Zoom. A couple things. We were not all on the screen. And imagine when you're in a room together, I think people's guard is up, their guard is up, and they may not want to comment one way or another on a question because they might not want people to hear their opinion. So when we were on Zoom, you had the opportunity to type in chat or not, and there were certain things he said, do not put a response, because he wanted people to just think about it, just think about the answer and not say the answer. But one of the most critical and impactful activities he did was he used PowerPoint, and he used basically like flashcards, and he didn't start with people. He started with everyday items and wanted you to react to them. So, there'd be things like broccoli, and I like broccoli. So I'm like, ooh, broccoli, where others might've been, broccoli, and then he did a bunch of different things like that to illustrate that we all have an opinion on something. We have a preference or a prejudice against everyday items. And then when he got to the people, it was people of all walks of life. And what I found most interesting in that is, we always talk about, people in all sizes, shapes, and colors. Well, what was interesting was they were also in all different kinds of clothing and all different types of, what we would perceive as beautiful to the not so beautiful, to the nerdy, to the glamorous. And sitting there watching that, realizing you have a judgment even on how someone dresses, was really interesting to me. What did you think of it, Lisa?
I thought the same. It was amazing because they had a lot of situations that you would cover in real life, and you would just sit there and automatically, boom, well, that person's well dressed, therefore. Yeah. And they even had some homeless people that were homeless people dressed up in business clothes. So, your opinion of somebody based on their circumstance in which you see them and the way that they are dressed doesn't always necessarily mean it's an indicator of who they really are at any particular given time, which is something that, you would think that as realtors, back in the day when we were holding open houses, you kind of always, kept in the back of your head, well, they always say, don't judge a book by its cover. The millionaire can be walking in a pair of, ripped up jeans and, looking scruffy, well, that goes across the board for all kinds of people, not just, people that in your mind are going to be the picture of the perfect homeowner, because everybody could be the perfect homeowner. And so learning about what is in your head, not to say that going to this class is going to purge you of all of this. You're not going to come out of here, oh, I'm the most unbiased person. You're aware and you can work on it.
Yeah.
And when it happens, you can catch yourself, because we all do it.
Yeah. And I think, with the At Home with Diversity class, it was pointed out. And at first my reaction was, oh, I can't believe he said that. Because what he said was, it's okay to be prejudiced. And I thought, are you serious? You're telling people it's okay to be prejudiced? It's okay to be prejudiced. You just don't act on it. Don't say anything. But what he was really trying to say is we have those biases, which can lead to a prejudice. And so it was kind of an interesting dichotomy, because it was like, you shouldn't be prejudiced, but yet what he was doing was he was acknowledging that we all have those prejudices, and maybe they're really biases. Some people take them more extreme and they are prejudices. So I just looked up the implicit bias training. NAR they mention it. They talk about that NAR is unveiling training for agents, but I don't see like a link to their actual training. So I'm not sure what they're offering, but at OCAR, we are going to be offering the implicit bias training from that instructor, Rudhir Krishdel. And that is going to be on the 22nd at 2 p.m. So I'll put the registration link in the Facebook chat as well. And I mean, if there's only one thing you can attend that week, the week of the 19th, I would highly encourage it to be that one.
And I second that. I mean, it's really something you really need to take. And he does make it very interesting. It is interactive. You can, participate in the chat if you wish. It keeps you engaged. And really, it was one of the best things that I've attended this year. And I agree. If you can attend this, that would be fantastic. What else we have going on for Fair Housing Week?
For that week. So I'll plug in each of the days. Let me get back to that screen.
If I remember correctly, it kicks off with a certain illustrious association president interviewing Brian Green from NAR and Matt DeFanis, the guy who spearheaded the Code of Ethics 10.5 movement. I believe that illustrious president's name is Lori Namazi.
Amy, yes, we kick off the Fair Housing Week with that interview. It's basically updates from NAR. So we're going to, we haven't finalized the questions, which reminded me this morning at 4:30 when I was awake. I never responded to Tiffany on that.
I think we have some homework to do.
Yeah. So this is being hosted. This whole week is being sponsored by the Risk Management Committee, of which Lisa's the chair, and I'm on the committee. And so
and you're the president.
So we kick off that week, and it's described as a robust discussion and updates with Brian Green, the Vice President of Policy Advocacy for NAR, and Matt DeFanis. This year, he's the chair of the Interpretations and Procedures Advisory Board. And so that's the group that really analyzes all of the interpretations of the bylaws and the Code of Ethics and everything. And it's kind of like the who's who of the history of the organization and the rules. So that will be the 19th from 10 to 11. So I'll plug that in. And then we have, let's see, what do we have on Tuesday? Unfortunately, it's not like on one screen where I can just read it. I have to go screen by screen. So that's
Yeah, I haven't been able to put everything into my calendar yet, so I'm really not of much help. I just know that I have to show up in a couple of things.
so on the Tuesday, the 20th, Lisa mentioned the 10-5. So that's the Code of Ethics Article 10, Standard of Practice 10-5, that Matt was the lead as the chair of the Professional Standards Committee to spearhead that effort to include this, to add this to the Code of Ethics. And so we've got looks like the current NAR Pro Standards Chair and the CAR Pro Standards Chair, as well as Orange County Realtors Pro Standards Chair. So we are fortunate enough to have all three levels come together to talk about this edition of the Standard of Practice, which, just for quick reference, is basically realtors cannot use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, or slurs based on race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And so that was something that we talked about at length last September or October before our November NAR meeting. And so did you notice how I slowed down and read each of those? Because once again, it's so easy to just like rattle them off and not even think about them. And so
those are just the federally protected classes.
Yeah, I'm really trying to be more intentional with reading that more carefully and digesting it more carefully. So
it will be a good talk too, because this is going to be talking about from the professional standards standpoint. If somebody feels that they have, they've seen somebody do this, or how to go about handling the grievance, what the situations are. It should really be interesting, especially for any professional standard junkies out there. I highly recommend it, but also too, it's good to know so you are educated, because this is still something that's floating around in some circles. The people that aren't really on top of things or are getting their information from less than reputable sources, shall we say. This is something. It's not violating your right to free speech. We are members of a private trade association, and as members of a private trade association, we have to abide by the rules of that private trade association. And that's basically why 10.5 was put up. There's been some really horrendous things that went on before this rule was enacted. Horrific stuff people were posting. It was a pretty volatile and, for lack of better words, nasty period of time last year. It had, I would like to think it's getting better. I'm not seeing it as often, but then again, I kind of stay away from that stuff. But we have to realize that you can't just run around and say horrible things and then say, "Oh, I'm a realtor, let me sell your house." It's like, no. So, good refresher, good reminder, good education, and go out and be the disciples. Go out and tell people they need to be watching this stuff and learn about this thing, the Code of Ethics.
Yeah, I would highly encourage everybody to attend as many of the events we have that week as possible, because Lisa mentioned being a disciple, and I agree with that. I think we are the role models, and even if we think we know it, stand out, be different from the others. We're above average in this group. We are well above average, and so that doesn't mean we don't need that training. That means we are the ones that show up and we hear it and we do it and we call people out on it. We had a meeting. I'll be pretty discreet on this example, but there was a meeting a few weeks ago, and there was a comment in the chat that it shocked me. It shocked me that it was there. Actually, it was in the Q&A, and so it was left there for a minute, and then it was technically answered without actually addressing that specific question, because the presenter was covering the details surrounding that general topic. So it was, marked as answered, so it could kind of go away. And then somebody else chimed in and said, well, I want to know about that answer, and copied the question, like copied it. So there it was again. And it was like, oh my God. And well, we were running out of time on that meeting. And so the hosts, graciously just ignored that. I was part of that meeting, running that meeting, and I just didn't feel good about letting it go. And in the moment, I wasn't quite sure how to address it. And so the person that initially posted it reached out to me on a completely different topic the following day. And so I responded to that text message. So I responded to that, but then I had the opportunity. And I said, the question you asked was very shocking to me. I wanted her to think that I was personally affected by it, even though it had nothing to do with me. Like there really was no reason I should have been personally affected by it, other than the fact that it was just not a good comment. And that's why I was affected by it. But I didn't have a personal, investment in what she said. So I wanted her to realize, knowing that she respects me, I wanted her to realize that I thought it was inappropriate. But if I had led with, that was such an inappropriate comment, she'd be like, whatever, it's just my opinion, freedom of speech, right? I knew, because I know the person. So I just more delicately said, look, I was really shocked by that comment. And, it didn't sit well with me that whole day. And so I'm glad I'm having this opportunity to address it with you, because there could have been so many other ways that you asked that question that wouldn't have been offensive. Because there are people in the group, I'm sure, that you offended with that comment. And I said, and you need to be careful, because this could be perceived as a violation of 10-5. And she freaked out and thanked me for letting her know. Now, there was a whole excuse behind it, which I just neglected to comment on that. But, this isn't just for social media. I mean, this was a public opportunity she had to share her opinion, and she did. And clearly at least one other person in the audience felt the same way, because copied the question. So it's just a reminder that this is what 10-5 is there for. This is the reason. It's because people are saying some less than appropriate things in the public, and that was considered in the public.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be on a Facebook post or anything. It can be a chat comment. It could be a comment that is made in front of a group of people. Which that's going to be a little bit more interesting to, imagine what that hearing would look like. But if you really offend somebody, they can, file a grievance. And if they see fit that this is something that's worthy of a hearing, you're going to have to go try to defend a comment that you probably really shouldn't have made. And maybe it's just, we kind of have to slow down. I mean, Lord knows stuff flies out of my mouth all the time that I'm like, oh my God, what did I just say? But, and people will make a mistake here and there, but a lot of people still don't understand what, how people can take their comments, because we don't know how other people life situation affects them, and how something that you might think is a harmless comment could really bother somebody and cause them pain for whatever reason it is. And you mentioned the federally protected classes. In California, we've got 22, and it's that covers a whole lot of people. And you just need to kind of rethink things before you put it out there. And that's an excellent example, Lori, of explaining to somebody, because I think that's the other thing. We've talked about some other groups out there that are trying to have what we could say are difficult conversations, trying to bring awareness to different cultures, different races, different ways that, we're the same, but we're all different, and we're different, but we're all the same. But it tends to be a little judgy. And, there's ways that you can be sensitive and have these conversations, because I would think the bulk of the people don't really mean harm, but they don't realize that they're causing harm or discomfort to somebody. And it can be true to yourself. You can kind of look in the mirror and say, well, what would affect me if somebody said something, and then think about it, really think about it, and then think how you need to change the way that you're communicating with, people. And, there's things that we do in our business that we don't even realize, if you are familiar with the Long Island Newsday expose. They cover that. If anybody in this group hasn't looked at it, they really should, and hopefully, we'll shed some light on that down the road. But I started thinking about myself, going, well, where have I done this? And I did it recently with a friend of mine who was looking for a place, and I knew that the person was close to my age, and I knew that at some point in time, stairs would not be our friend. Stairs are already not my friend. And I was imposing my own personal preferences upon my client, saying, oh, there's too many stairs there. You don't want that. There's too many stairs. Place that the person picked had so many friggin' stairs, you wouldn't believe it. And I'm like, you know what? Glad I finally took myself out of the equation, because I found myself, and I'm going to use the word, steering him away. Now, we always think of steering in the historic redlining steering, that kind of horrible kind of stuff. Well, I was still steering. I'm steering them towards properties that I thought that they would like better, that would be more suitable for them, when really it's none of my business. I'm supposed to be showing the person the houses that they are, that they want to see. They want to see everything that's on the market. Well, then, by golly, I'm going to show them everything on the market, take my personal bias out of it, because mine was age related. I was basically discriminating on age, which is funny because the person's about the same age as me, but I was doing it. And it's like, wow. I got to catch myself. I got to be sure that I don't do those things. So, not only is it, things we can see about our clients, but it's also things we can't see about our clients too. So we just need to be very careful and very sensitive of how we talk to our clients and each other.
That's right. Excellent point and good example. An example that is not an obvious example.
Yeah. We make these decisions for our clients when really our job is to show them all of the available properties in the areas that they wish to see. And they are the people that determine what areas they wish to see.
That's right. That's right. And so back to the schedule. And so then on the Friday, we have the buyer interest letters and fair housing updates. And that is going to be a presentation by Farrah Wilder, who is the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, as well as Vice President. That's not in the title, in the written title, but it's part of her title. And she's going to talk about the buyer love letters, or the buyer interest letters, or whatever you want to call them. She's going to be talking about that on Friday morning. So I'm going to post that link in as well.
Yes, that will be good. And, we'll talk about that a little bit this month, because I think, again, having the conversation about it so we can go out and be the disciples and tell people in our offices, maybe this is not a good idea, because now I know the person or the company or whomever didn't get in trouble for a love letter, but there was a brokerage that got a fair housing violation, and shared with Lori and I believe, maybe our risk management committee, I'm not sure, I don't remember correctly, but the fines that were involved, that I think is something that people really should know about, the amount of the fines that can be involved if you get nailed with a fair housing violation. And they were 5-digit fines, and training that had to take place company-wide. And the agent got hit with the fines as well as the brokerage, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think in that case, the brokerage extended the brokerage fine to the agent.
Which probably a lot of brokerages would do. Yeah, definitely.
I remember that, and it's just one of those situations where in hindsight, you look back and you try to reflect, what could I have done differently? And I'm sure that agent still is thinking, what should I have done differently? And, as the story went, she thought she was doing the right thing. Her good intentions got in the way of just telling the truth. She fell into a fair housing landmine because she didn't want to tell the client that their credit was bad. And I don't know about you, but I know what my credit is. I know that it's good, and I would know if it's bad. So there was no secret there. The credit report was pulled. The lady had a copy. She already knew her credit was bad. Just didn't want to hurt her feelings, so came up with something else that was a fair housing violation.
Yeah.
Not smart. Not
Yeah,
smart at all.
that is not good. But 5 digits, that's a lot. 4 digits is a lot. 5 digits is like, man, you know what? You better really start thinking about what's coming out of your mouth.
Well, and especially I'll add, that was on a lease. So the commission wasn't even 5 digits.
The commission probably wasn't 4.
It possibly was not even 4.
Just because the person didn't want to hurt somebody's feelings.
Yeah. When I was at my previous broker, and I would go into our new agent training and do the risk management training for them. One thing I would emphasize is you work really hard for the money you earn. You certainly don't want to have to do an extra deal or 2, or in this case 10, to recover money for a mistake that you made. And in this case, her penalty could have been a lot worse. I mean, I know in her eyes that was the worst thing that could happen to her, but it could have gone a lot worse.
Yeah.
I don't even think that was reported to the Department of Real Estate. I'm not sure. And it's not quite their jurisdiction, but they could have weighed in on it and did given her a suspended license for failing to follow laws. That is their jurisdiction, even though it's not a real estate regulation. I'm sure within the real estate regulations, there are fair housing components. I don't want to say there's not. I don't have them all memorized, just some of them. But, failing to follow laws certainly is under their purview. So she could have actually had her license suspended.
And, one thing that we have that can help us all remember what it is we should be doing and shouldn't be doing and all of that was something that came about this year as well, which is our Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisory, because that came out in October, was it? Let's see.
Yeah, October 8th or 10th.
Yeah, and before that, there was only one line in all of our contracts, and it was equal housing opportunity. The property is sold in compliance with federal, state, and local anti-discrimination laws. Up until the advisory coming out, that was all we had to educate our clients, give ourselves a reminder. So, I would highly recommend for everybody to get out a copy of their Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisory and read it. And I think you might really be surprised, of all of the information that's in there. And there's a lot of good reminders in there. You know, it gives you all of the protected classes in California and, you know, source of income, disability, medical condition, citizenship, primary language, immigration status, military and veterans, which I want to spend a whole day on that because I have so many questions, age, criminal history, and any arbitrary characteristic. What can fall into any arbitrary characteristic?
I'm going to say my red hair does.
That could, and not that I currently have any. Who knows what may happen in the future? Let's say tattoos. You know, if you're one of those people that are just like, oh, they have too many tattoos. Well, guess what? That's an arbitrary characteristic. I have some other ones I'm thinking about, but we'll talk about those offline because I'd love to get your input before I bring it out to the group. But, you know, I mean, just, you know, you got to be careful out here. You really have to be careful. You know, I was violating the age thing all over the place with, you know, that one client of mine. And, you know, I'm lucky that they were a friend. Because if they weren't a friend, and said, how come you're not showing me any upstairs units? How come you're not, you know, why are you not taking me over to those townhomes that I asked to see? I think you have bad knees. I guess bad knees is an arbitrary characteristic, or is it
medical condition?
Medical condition. So I'm just, oh man, we're ticking off the list of how many things can I screw up here?
Yeah.
And this was all.
And I remember when the form first came out and people were kind of joking about that arbitrary characteristic category, like, oh, well, just anything and everything. Well, you know, we're all different. And what it comes down to is, you know, people were saying, what's the definition of that? There isn't a specific definition that includes all of the possible arbitrary characteristics. We've named a couple, but the reality is that category is for a decision that's made based on something about that person other than their qualification to get the property. That's what it covers. So if if we go back to the conversation about the implicit bias training where it talks about broccoli, well, I like broccoli, so maybe I'll rent to that person because, you know, they like broccoli or they are a broccoli, you know, I mean, now that's silly. But if I didn't like broccoli and that person liked broccoli, or that person looked like broccoli or is broccoli, but I didn't select them because of that, then that falls into that you've done a discriminatory action by not selecting the person because of the arbitrary characteristic.
Exactly. That one could get a lot of people in a lot of trouble, and people wouldn't even realize that they're doing it. And, you know, it's just, you know, your clients want to see everything in their price range. Show them everything in their price range.
Let them eliminate the properties.
Exactly. And, you know, one thing that's really nice about this form is it also gives you examples down on the bottom of the first page. And I believe they even cover, you know, letters, a little bit on there. And there's all kinds of different good information. And I bet you so many people have not ever read this form. And
or they read it really quickly and glossed over it because yeah, I know that.
Yeah, because you're looking at like, oh, look, there's a table of stuff. Hey, look, that's all of the things. Isn't that swell? Okay, great. But the other thing is, and that people should be aware of, is there's fair housing resources here, where if you feel you've been discriminated upon, where your clients who have a copy of this can go and file a complaint. So, you know, there's all kinds of different things here. And there are some limited exceptions, and those are listed as well. So, you know, start off Fair Housing Month with a review of the Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisory, and maybe suggest to your office manager, or if you're an office manager or a broker out there, maybe cover it with, you know, your agents just as a reminder, and tell them to come to these events that Orange County Realtor is having, and I'm sure people within other associations, those associations are doing events as well. because it is really important, because think about it. What arbitrary group do you belong to? And how would you like it if somebody told you, I'm sorry, I don't think that place is going to work for you?
Right.
It's not a good thing. So on that note, our chat's been a little quiet today, so hopefully everybody is taking down those notes of the different things to register for, and we would love to see everybody show off a Fairhaven completion certificate. I think that would be pretty cool. And let's see. And we also have over on our Deliberately Fair Housing Facebook group, that is kind of like a little sibling group. If you're not a member, I'll go ahead and do a post in our group inviting you to go over to that group and join us for our deliberate discussion on Thursday at 4:30 of this week. And we're going to have a conversation with shall I call them the founders of the group, pretty much? And we're just going to talk about all things fair housing. We have a guest or two hop on, people can share their stories, and it's just going to be a good conversation. We'd love for you all to join us there as well. So we've got that going on, plus our other events, and it's going to be a busy month, isn't it?
Absolutely. It definitely will be a busy month.
And speaking of a busy month, Lori has a meeting she has to run off to. So we'll probably just stop just a couple of seconds shy of 10 o'clock here, but go out and spread the word, especially for this stuff, because this is so important, so important. And just think how you would feel, because really it's all about treat others as you would like to be treated yourself. And that goes across all aspects of this business, whether it's fair housing related or how you handle offers, no matter what it is, think about how you would like to be treated. And, maybe this is my weekend sermon. I don't know.
Yeah, well, maybe we didn't talk about this beforehand, but maybe we should throw out a little challenge. Maybe between today and next Monday, anyone who reads the Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisory and posts, we can do a post that says, be sure to read it. And maybe we'll even put the PDF there, because that's probably what I'd do. And so it's handy. Post your aha moment, something that was like, oh, I didn't realize, or oh, I'm doing that wrong. I think that would be cool to just kind of share and see, what did you learn from it? Is there anything you didn't really know?
I like that. Okay.
I'll come up with a little treat for those who participate, and it'll be fun to read those and review them.
Yeah, I think that's great. And also too, if you complete the Fairhaven training, definitely, put a post on the group, and if you guys post your stuff, I will be sure that it shows up in the group, and we would love to see that as well, because it really is good. So just a couple of things that you can do to kick off your Fair Housing Month, and challenge your friends, challenge the marketing meeting people that you see in your Zooms and stuff like that. Let them know it is Fair Housing Month, and we want housing for all.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to run. Bye, everyone.
On that note, we'll take off here. We'll see y'all later. Have a good week. Go out and sell a house.
Bye.
Bye.